This video is about the light-shadow pattern. This is how light hits an object and falls off it to create shadow. So here I'm laying in a circle, which is going to be turned into a sphere using shading. That's my light source. You can see my light source is hitting the sphere from a particular angle. And that's going to determine how the light falls on that sphere. I'm laying in some lines there to figure out the perspective of the shadow. Now we'll be talking more about perspective very soon, but just be aware that how the light hits and from what angle it hits is going to determine how the cast shadow falls. So I'm writing in here some basics of the light shadow pattern: the light side, the shadow side, and the cast shadow. Those are the three main components. Notice too that as the light hits the sphere, it creates kind of a pole on one end and a pole on the other, sort of almost like the Earth, the North Pole and the South Pole. Here I'm shading in the shadow side of the sphere. I'm using a hatching line. Again, it's best when you're shading to stick with the same kind of line until you finish the shading area. I'll switch lines in just a second to a cross contour line. Notice how I'm going around the outside of the half circle. But as I get towards the center, my line will straighten out. So it's going around the form. Those are really good lines for defining the actual form. Cleaning up there a little bit. I've sped up my drawing quite a bit here, or we'd be sitting here all day. This is the shadow, the cast shadow. The cast shadow is being cast on a flat surface, so a hatching line is really great for any flat surface that you're shading. Coming back in here and giving a little edge there now because it's a circular object. There isn't going to be a hard line between the light side and the shadow side. It's going to be kind of blurred. I'm using a harder pencil now. I started with a 2B. Now I've switched to a 2H. There's a beauty of putting a harder pencil over a softer pencil to get a darker area. My paper is fairly rough. It has a lot of texture, so you can see that texture coming through the pencil. Here I've added a piece of tracing paper, put it under my hand to keep myself from smudging too much on the pencil. I really want to try to get my shading by pencil and not by smudging. So now I'm really just coming in here and cleaning up and adding in some darks. The darkest dark is going to be at the base of the sphere. It's called the occlusion shadow. That part I'm working on right there is called the core shadow. So now I'm adding in my little notes about what is what. So the core shadow generally happens right after the light falls off into the shadow side. You'll notice that there's quite a difference between the light and the shadow side. It's not necessarily a lot of gray tones. The light side is mostly very light.